Welcome. In a previous video I did an unboxing of this Amcrest 8 megapixel PoE outdoor turret camera. And this camera was provided to me by Amcrest, but they're not paying me for this video and they're not reviewing this content before I post it. They also gave me a 10% coupon code that you can use on Amazon. So I'll put a link in the description of this device on Amazon and I'll put a note about the coupon code down there. And if you use that link, it helps me out a little bit and doesn't cost you anything extra. And that's my Amazon affiliate link, but the coupon code, I don't get anything for that. That just helps you guys out a little bit. So in this video I'm going to go through the setting it up on a computer and doing more advanced configuration of this Amcrest camera. I'll also put a link in the description to the old video if you haven't seen it yet. But to get started, what you want to do is download the Amcrest IP config tool, and I'll put a link in the description to this website, and you can download that for Mac or for Windows. And then you also want to install the Amcrest WebView app in the Chrome Web Store. So I'm using Chrome browser. That's the one I found works best with this. I actually haven't really used this with Firefox or Safari on my Mac. When you have Chrome, you can install this Amcrest WebView, and then once you install it, it'll say Launch App. And on my browser, if I open a new tab here, I see this little app icon in the upper left. I can click on that, and then I want to open the Amcrest WebView application. So that opens this thing. It's essentially like its own browser. Let me close out of this. Okay, and it's waiting for an IP address now. So I want to find out the IP address of the camera I installed in the last video. So what I want to do is open up the Amcrest IP config software. So once I have that open, it'll list all my Amcrest cameras. I'll scroll this open. This looks like more cameras than it is because it's showing the IPv4 and IPv6 addresses. The camera I just installed was this IP8M. It's an 8 megapixel, so you see that 8M. And then the IP address is 192.168.7.181. So I'll type that in here. And we'll get the login page. And we're done with this for now. So close it, make this full screen. I want to type in my username and password I set in the last video. So now we have a view of the security camera. So if we start at the top here, you'll see we have live, playback, and cloud storage. And we're looking at the live view. Playback shows stored video on the micro SD card that we installed. And then cloud storage is if you have cloud storage set up, which I don't have set up right now. So we'll come back to this playback in a little bit. We'll look at the live screen first. We have the main screen, and you can see it's taking about 8K kilobits per second. And then we can look at substream 1. And this is taking, looks maybe like 300 kilobits per second. So the difference here is the main stream is the 4K stream, and this substream is, I think, 640 by 480. So this is a lower bandwidth stream. So if you were streaming this over the internet and you didn't have a lot of bandwidth, you could use this lower bandwidth stream. And needless to say, the quality is not as good. So it's a trade-off. A higher bitrate stream is going to have more quality than a lower bitrate stream. There's also a substream 2. I don't think that's set up right now. Well, it says 40 kilobits per second. I don't know. I'm not sure that's set up yet. So we'll click back on mainstream. If we go over to the right here, we can see this little box here. It says digital zoom. So if I click on that, I can use my scroll wheel and scroll into the video and zoom in on things. Now, while this is a 4K camera, you can't zoom in and see every blade of grass like you can on like a TV show where they can do it on security cameras. But you can zoom in quite a bit. And then if we turn that off, so next we have this little camera snapshot. So if I click that, it'll open up my file dialog box, and I can save a snapshot of the screen here. You can also do triple snapshot, which takes 3 pictures, and you can record video. And then over here we have audio. So if I click this, it'll stream the audio through the camera, which there's not much audio aside from wind noise right now. So I'll turn that off. If we go to the lower left, we have this image adjustment. If we click that, you come up here on the right. It has the brightness, so it's at 64 now. We can turn that down or up. You can do contrast. This one is hue, so you can change the hue, and this one is saturation. And of course you can reset those too. So I'll close that. Next we have the 1:1, which is the original size. So if we click that, we're going to see the kind of the native image resolution of the camera. So we can scroll around here. So if you had a huge monitor, I do have a big monitor, but I'm filming this at 1080p. You could see a more native resolution with that. And then we have W:H. So this is to change the aspect ratio. So we have original. We can change adaptive. This widens it. So I'll keep it at original. Then we have fluency, and we have the real time, normal, or fluency. So you can change that if you're having glitchiness in your video. You can play with that feature. And then PTZ is point, tilt, zoom. And this doesn't have like point, tilt, zoom features, so this isn't very useful for this part. Next we'll go to playback. And this will only show up if you have an SD card installed. So I can click play here, and we can see the video. This was shot just after midnight, it looks like. There was a rainstorm overnight. And then you can drag this little white thing here down on the timeline. So this is an example of the night vision capabilities, although it's not perfect because, okay, we switched off video. It's not perfect because we're just looking at the environment around here. It'd probably be helpful to like maybe I can walk in front of it sometime and create a video with that so you can see what a human looks like under it. Because like if you're using this for a security camera, you're gonna want to see what a person looks like, and just seeing my yard doesn't really give you an idea of that. So you can go to the different parts in the timeline down here. You can also go to this file list over on the right, and then you can click on the timeline here. So I think you double click on these and it'll pull up different times, and you can click it. This is like 8:52 this morning. There's one, 9 o'clock. And these are all triggered events. So you can see there was a car driving by at that time. And that's set up in the setup. So that's just a basic overview of this playback here if you have the internal SD card. So this is kind of a neat feature. If you don't have an NVR or network video recorder or NAS or any kind of security system, you can buy this camera, put a micro SD card in it, and have a security system. The downside of that is that someone could steal your camera with the SD card in it. So if this camera was kind of up high where someone couldn't reach it, it'd be a little bit more secure than if it's where someone could reach it. But as with everything, there's trade-offs. If you're storing the video on the camera, it's easy that way, but someone could steal it. So you need to look at your own situation and determine if that's a good idea. So next we'll go to setup up here on the top. And this is where you do all the setup for the camera. So our default starts on camera here. We have configuration, and we are on picture. There's a day and night profile. So you can change this when you're on night vision mode. You could have different settings from daytime mode. You can flip it. You can do mirror image. You can change the different settings here, but I usually leave that all default. You can change the exposure. So this is BLC mode. This is backlight compensation, I think it is. And then this is HLC is highlight compensation maybe. And WDR is probably wide dynamic range, but I usually leave the defaults there. Here's white balance mode, day and night mode, IR light. You can have smart IR off or manual, and then the indicator light is on. I guess I didn't notice an indicator light on there. I should check that later. So that was under camera and configuration. Next, if we go to video, we're going to see the mainstream and the substream. And if you remember on the live page, we had mainstream and substream 1 and substream 2. Under the substream here, you can change this for substream 1 and substream 2. So the mainstream is going to be your high res, like best quality stream. And your encode mode is H.264H, and the H would be high profile, and H.265. So H.264 is going to be more compatible. H.265 might have a little bit better compression on it. So I usually use H.264 right now, but maybe someday I'll switch that. The resolution is defaulted to 4K, which is 3840 by 2160, and you can change that to 1080p, 720p, and a bunch of different resolutions in between. And then the frame rate is 15. So that's the max frame rate at 4K. If you go down to like 1080p, you can up that to 30 frames per second. But typically you're not using these to like record sports or things, it's just for security. So that's why the frame rate is lower at 4K. You don't really need that 30 FPS for this application. And it would cost more to have, higher bit rate. I know you can get like an action camera with 4K 60 FPS, but that's not really needed for most security applications. And then for bitrate type, you have CBR, which is constant bitrate, and VBR, which is variable bitrate. And I'm not an expert on this, but I'm guessing CBR is probably more compatible than VBR, but most things probably support either one now. And then we have the bitrate. It says customized, but I think I messed something up here, so let me hit reset defaults. There we go. The bitrate is 8192 by default, and you can raise or increase that, and that will lower the quality. If you lower it, it could increase the quality if you raise it. Like in my yard where I have the grass, it's going to require a higher bit rate for better quality, but if you were pointing this at like a concrete wall, you could probably get away with a lower bit rate and still have good quality video. So that's something to just play around with for your situation. There's a watermark settings that says watermark characters digital CCVT. I haven't really messed with that at all. So now if we go over to the substream, like I said before, we can do substream 1 and 2. The encode method is H.264 which is motion JPEG, and that's really just like a bunch of JPEG images smushed together. And then you can do H.265. And the resolution here is just at 640 by 480. You can't really adjust that to anything else. And the frame rate is 15 frames per second. It's constant bit rate, and then you can change the bit rate here. It's 256. And then the frame interval, I didn't talk about that over here. I think that's like a keyframe kind of thing, but I'm not completely sure. If we go to substream 2, I think we can change, let's see. Yeah. So if you go to substream 2 here, you can change it to like a different encode mode. So you could have H.264 on mainstream, you could have H.265 on substream 1, and motion JPEG on substream 2. So there's a lot of flexibility here. So the mainstream is going to be used for the high quality stuff. The substream would typically be used like on the mobile app. You would often use that because you have better performance with the substream. So, but here you might be monitoring something, but you're going to record the mainstream so you can have the detail of say like someone's face. So on the substream, you may see someone breaking into your storage facility. You'll call the police. Later you'll give them the evidence from the mainstream. So next we want to click on snapshot. So you can record video for events or you can do snapshots. This has general or event, the quality level, and the interval 1 second, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or customized. Overlay is an area that I will often config. So we have privacy here. So if you wanted to block something like, say, the neighbor's garage, you could bring this little black box up here, and you could block out that part of the video. And we want to hit enabled here. I have it disabled because I don't really want to save this. So I'm going to reset this. Next we have the channel title, and it says IPC. So it's down here at the lower left, and I'm going to call this front door. And I'll hit save here. So this will say front door now. And then we have the time, so you can have enabled or disabled or display the day of the week. So if we do that, we'll add the day of the week to it. That might be kind of handy. I'll save that. And then logo overlay. Usually I've seen somewhere they'll say Amcrest on here, but I'm not seeing the logo here, so I'm not sure what the deal is. But I usually leave that disabled anyway. So path is where you can store these things. You have like the live record, live snapshot, live record, playback snapshot, playback download, and video clips. So this is on this live view. You can tell it where to save those things. And if we click next on the next part, we have audio, and here you have the mainstream. It says enable. It's AAC. There's this G.711A, G.711MU, and G.726. And those I would assume are codecs. I'm not familiar with any of those, so you could Google those if you are curious about them. The sampling frequency is 16,000, and you can change that here. The substream 1, substream 2, you can have different audio codecs here. So there's a lot of versatility in this. The audio in device is the mic, and you can have a noise filter on or off, and then you can change the volume of the microphone. So next we'll go to network. And the first thing we have here is TCP/IP. We can change the host name here. So I could call this front door cam. And we have the mode. The Ethernet card is a default, and then the mode is static or DHCP. And I like to use DHCP, but then I go into my router and I use the MAC address to use the same IP. Like I set a static IP on the router for this MAC address. Alternatively, you could say static here, and then you could put a static IP in. You really probably don't want your IP addresses to change, so you probably want to use static here or on the router. And that's pretty basic IP address stuff here. P2P, if you click on that, it shows your little QR code that I used to set it up. So there's lots of settings here. I'm going to breeze through most of these. You have connection. These are some ports it uses for like HTTP and such. And ONVIF, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, ONVIF. That's a protocol used for security camera systems. We have DDNS. I don't know that this was in all the old cameras. I'm not sure. But here you could have dynamic DNS through Amcrest. It looks like it's free. You would enter in your domain name you want to use, and it would go back to your IP. So this is good if you have a dynamic IP address on your WAN. I have a static IP, so I wouldn't be using this, but it's kind of a neat feature. You have IP filter, so you can, looks like you can filter out or allow IP addresses. I don't really use that. SMTP is to send you alerts on your email. So with Google, which most people use, it seems, you have to go in and I think you have to go in and allow insecure access, they call it now, to connect up your Gmail to this camera. That's how most things work now, but I haven't really played with this much. But it looks like you can also go into Outlook.com, Comcast, Yahoo, and other. I'm guessing this is just SMTP. Universal plug and play, simple network management protocol, multicast settings, 802.1x authentication, quality of support, and HTTPS. This would be nice if you're using this over the internet. You'd probably want to set up HTTPS. I do sometimes on my local LAN. It's probably a good practice too. So maybe I'll change this later. Next, we'll click on Event and go to Video Detection. And this is I've gone into this before this video, but more or less this is all default stuff that you're seeing here. Video detection is enabled by default. We can click on Schedule here, and you can see this green is that it's scheduled all the time, but you can set up pretty detailed scheduling. So if I click on Set up next to Sunday, I can go down here and say I want it from, say, 8 to 10 and 4 to 5. You can get really detailed on that, and then you can go to Monday and do it. So lots of configuration settings there. The detection area will show our camera, and we have region 1 here, and you can go in and turn this on or off. So I could say take out the road if I don't want cars to trigger this. You can change the sensitivity and the threshold, and you can have multiple regions here too. So you can have region 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can set different settings for each region. Then you can have a record delay is 10 seconds, so it waits 10 seconds to start recording. You can have it send an email if you have email set up, and then you can do snapshot. You can have 1, 3, or 5 pictures taken. And then you have video tampering, so this would be, so I'm not sure completely what that is. Let's see, enable, schedule. That might be if someone's tampering with your camera. Then you have audio detection. So here you can enable this. You can change the sensitivity and the threshold here. You can change the schedule. So this is a lot like the video. You have a record delay of 10 seconds, then you can have it send an email and do a snapshot. Then you have abnormality, and here you have no SD card, SD card error or capacity warning. And network, you have disconnected or IP conflict, and illegal access if someone tries to log into it. Next we'll click on storage and schedule. So this shows the record schedule. We have motion for, this is set up by default to have motion and alarm for everything. So if we click setup here, you can also have general, so that would record all the time if we did that. So you could have this record 24/7. It's going to take up a lot of storage, but you could do that. You have the same thing for the snapshot schedule. So this is record schedule, I think, would be for recording video. Snapshot is for taking snapshots. And then holiday schedule, I'm not exactly sure what that is. That might be for weekends or special days when you want to record all the time. I'm not sure. I haven't really played around with that. And on destination here we have the path, and you have SD card, FTP, or NAS. And I've made a video on FTP and NAS. I'll put a link in the description of my Amcrest playlist. And if there's anything you want to see, I can make a new video, another video if I haven't covered anything. But right now I'm using the SD card. I could also click on FTP or NAS. We click on SD card here. We have the SD card in here. You can see it's used 6 gig of 128 gig. If you go to FTP here, you can set up an FTP server here, and then you can also click on this emergency store on SD card. So if the FTP server is not accessible, you can store it locally. And you can do the same thing with the NAS here. So you can click on that emergency store on SD card. So since SD cards are super cheap, if you're recording to FTP or NAS, it probably makes sense to put an SD card in here just for emergency purposes. If like your network goes down or something, you want to make sure you get stored on there. So one thing about the NAS, says NAS, but it's NFS, or Network File System, is the protocol this uses. So if we click on record control here, it says pack duration is 8 minutes. So I think this would cut it into 8-minute chunks, if I'm understanding that correctly. Pre-event record is 5 seconds. So this is if it sees an event, it will record for 5 seconds before the event happens. For disk full, you have overwrite or stop. And record mode is auto, manual, or off. And record stream is mainstream. So this is the stream we configured earlier. You can have it do substream. That's going to be a pretty low quality recording. Mainstream is going to be the higher quality recording. So next we have cloud storage, and this would be setting up cloud storage with Amcrest. We click on over to system here in general. We have our device name. We have our language, which is just English. The video standard is NTSC. So I imagine in other parts of the world, maybe this might have other languages and PAL, but it doesn't here. So date and time, you can change the format here. You can sync the time with your current computer. You can enable daylight saving time, and you can sync with NTP server. So I'll probably turn on this sync with NTP server later, and I'll enter in my daylight saving time things here. I need to put the range in for when it starts and ends. Next we'll click on manage users. We can add users here. You can give them different access control to the camera. Default settings allows you to reset to default settings, and you can also do a factory default, which would make it like when you got it. Import export, this is a nice feature. I always like to do this. Once I get it how I want it, I'll hit export here and it will export a config file, and then later if I ever have to reset this camera, I can go to import here and import the config right back up. So auto maintain will auto reboot this on a regular basis and auto delete old files. You can also manually reboot it here. And then upgrade will allow you to upgrade to the latest firmware. So you can download that and upload it here. I checked this camera as of the day I bought it, had the latest firmware on it. So under information, you can look at version, so you can see the software version. This is essentially the firmware version you're using. Next, we can click on log. So I can click search here, and it will show all the access we've had to this here. You can also do remote log and log it to a different server. And then online users shows who's online, and it's just me right now. So that's a run through of the features on the web interface on this camera. So if you're interested in purchasing one of these cameras, just remember I have that link in the description on Amazon, and I also have that coupon code. If you have any questions or anything you want me to cover in a future video, please drop that in the comments. If you like this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.